In progress.
Like you don't know what I'm talking about.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 5th, 2026 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I'm Joanne Crowley, the chair. The public is always welcome to attend in person. Thank you for those of you who have come tonight. And they're also welcome via alternative public access provided on the notice of the meeting, available at the Town of Yarmouth website. I'd like to take roll call. Susan Britta.
Present.
Deirdre Gay-Quinn.
Present.
Tom Peddleton.
Present.
Will Rubenstein. Peter Slovak. Kevin Smith. Joanne Crowley, present. I see that we have a quorum present, so I'll now call the meeting to order. And I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have to say that's one of my favorite parts of the meeting. So first on our agenda this evening tonight are short-term rentals. We've been working on this for a little while. Sorry, I've got too many glasses on my head here. And Kathy has prepared draft number 6. Do I have that right, Kath? Dated July 30th, 2026. And again, the new text has been highlighted. And I'm going to ask Kathy to update us on this. We are also welcome to be joined this evening by our town council, Jay Tallerman. Jay, can you hear us?
I can,
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
of course.
Remember, this is an ongoing process, and our goal is to produce the best bylaw for Yarmouth. We've been focusing on enforcement, occupancy, ownership, and parking, and we would like to lock in some language as quickly as we can, which is why it's so helpful that Jay, Mr. Tallerman, is here this evening. He's communicated with Kathy over the past several weeks, and we're hoping we can lock in at least some language to move forward, because we're on a deadline for a special town meeting. Kathy, I'd like to turn it over to you. And in our packets tonight, we have the outline of changes. So why don't you walk through those changes for us and the public, Kath, if you wouldn't mind.
The packet, the version that you have in front of you that I laid on the dais and that the audience has some additional comments now from Council from Jay.
Guys, is that mic on?
Flashing red.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Still flashing red and green, red and green.
Okay.
That's new. I've never seen it. It's Christmassy. I did change it to the other one.
That was flashing too.
That one's flashing as well.
Try the one on the scanning thing.
We're gonna need.
I'd like to also mention that our building commissioner, Mark Grills, is here to help us through this process. He's getting a replacement for you, I guess.
That might not be a bad idea, Mark, at least for you, because then everyone can hear you. Yeah.
For Mark, just for you to sit over here?
Yeah, those work. It's all. I'm not sure the wireless ones, but we have three. We have those three.
But these work.
Those work. Yeah, they all. The board's mics are working, but these are flashing or whatever.
Eugene?
short string.
Yeah. Well, I'm just seeing if this one would go to the,
To make it to the podium? It's wrapped up there.
Are you able to fix, or should we start?
I'm gonna try in the back, but for that, if you could use those, that would be helpful, because they're
There you
all
go.
I've never seen this.
You are right next to me.
I'll sit right beside you. if you like. I don't care. I like sitting in the back.
And handle
We'll make you an ex officio member of the planning board.
I'm all set. I think I'm already part of the zoning board of appeals too.
Oh, I know.
Thank you.
It was all organized a second ago.
Two of us.
Seems to be coming in this week.
Just got rid of the house.
So Kathy, you're going to present from there?
It's great to see
I
you.
can, Kathy, I can shift down if you want to sit.
I'm wondering if that.
Oh, okay.
We can all slide down, absolutely.
Slide down, don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'm junior.
Take an extra
There we
seat
go.
over here.
Oh, you could just slide. Take your name
can
plate,
d-
sir.
Oh, you don't.
You can sit in Ken's seat.
Holy crap.
Okay. Clear.
Remember
Hey, we're flexible.
Ken's seat. Hold on, you can pull you. That's all right.
No, Mark,
You stay.
it's okay.
Just move one to him.
Keep you guys all together.
Herding cats, herding cats.
Yeah, herding cats.
That's it.
Yeah.
Geez, I'm not used to being down here.
Over to where I can actually talk.
We think so. Interesting. I've sat here before.
Can't you pull this
I've
one
sat
out?
here before.
No, it's.
For those of you who haven't joined us before, this is very unusual. This could be a first.
It's not, it's gonna die.
Oh, just don't electrocute yourselves. There you go.
And don't trip.
All right.
No falls.
All right, wait a minute, wait a minute.
We're going.
So again, on the agenda this evening, our first item is short-term rentals, and we're joined remotely by our town council, Jay Tallerman, and Kathy has draft number 6 that she's provided to us and to the public.
And she's gone.
And now she's
Show the
back.
screen so Jay can see what we're looking at, as well as the people.
Yeah, Jake, can you hear us and see us?
Unmute. Unmute.
I can hear you and I see you all. Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry for the mix-up.
I just needed Liam to show this to Jay so that he can see it.
Yeah.
He's-
So Jay, you can see what we're looking at.
I cannot. The screen is not shared. No.
Okay. Does that end microphone work?
But I may have the documents. I'm not sure what Kathy is showing
She
you.
should pull the microphone toward her
No,
face.
tell her. It doesn't pull out like these
No,
do.
but it does.
It's draft number 6 dated July 30th.
Right.
Or
I
is there a
have
newer-
that.
There's a newer
Um,
one. Sorry.
I need you to show that to Jay. Yeah, thank
And,
you.
and Susan pointed out, you need to turn your microphone towards you.
No, this was,
I'm not used to being over here.
oh, I'm looking
And the
down
chair's
here.
really high and my feet aren't even touching the ground, so I feel like I'm 12. Okay, all right, now we're back in action, everybody. Thank you for your patience. What I'm looking at is the version that includes some comments from town council, as well as some highlighted edits from some of our previous discussions. I think I'm just going to kind of go through some of the highlighted information. We had a definition for corporations, since we have been looking at not allowing corporations to have short-term rentals. We needed to have a definition. I think Jay modified and simplified the corporation definition, so it now reads, all for-profit and charitable corporations required to register or license to do business in Massachusetts or other recognized business entities. I think maybe we'll go through each one as we're moving along. I personally didn't have any issues with that. I don't know if Jay had anything further he wanted to add.
No, yeah, I thought it would be better, and thank you for catching that typo, Kathy, too, just to simplify it to its essence, because it's just kind of hard to try and capture everything in every statute. So I thought it would be a more broad brush at the definition there would probably be better.
So unless
Thank you,
any-
Jay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're good with that.
So everything else stayed the same with definitions of owner, operator, short-term rental.
Sorry to interrupt, Kath. What I want to do in terms of managing the way we go through this evening, because we want to lock down the language as best we can while we have town council here. Kathy's going to go through each of these, and at least for this session, we would like to come to some consensus. Yeah, this is good. All right, so this one is good, Kath.
Corporate, there, got it. So I think the next really big question is us not wanting to have like commercialized short-term rentals in our residential zoning district. So how can we prevent corporations or entities from going in and buying up a lot of residential homes in our zoning districts and then turning them all into short-term rentals? So we're trying to limit that. I don't think we quite have the language right yet. And then maybe this is, I think, something where I'm really hoping that Jay can provide a little bit more assistance with. Originally, we had something just simply as dwelling units owned by a C corporation, S corporation, a nominee trust and partnership, real estate investment trust, or any similar entity, owner, or individual that is engaged primarily in short-term rental investment activity. And there were some concerns that Jay had about that language differing from P-towns and maybe needing to reference natural persons. And then we tried some other options. And I think this might be a case where I'm going to ask Jay to jump in. We were talking about trying to put the language in that was very similar to P-towns, where it's dwelling units owned by a C corporation are not eligible, but wanted to clarify that short-term rentals are allowed in dwelling units owned by an LLC, a trust, or an S corporation only when every shareholder, partner, or member of the legal entity is a natural person. We're hoping for some definition on natural person, but again, that's something that was in P-towns as established by documentation provided by the applicant if requested at the time of application. And then number 7 is really what we're trying to get at, is we don't want dwelling units used solely as an investment properties in residential zoning districts. So maybe, Jay, you could jump in on there, that what we're trying to get at was really inhibiting the proliferation of commercialization of short-term rentals in our residential zoning districts, but I don't think we have the language quite right yet.
Right. So first of all, I think if you want to, we may want to consider, so as not to confuse people that live in a corporate world, maybe instead of C corporation, which I think we were defining that previously because there are C corporations and S corporations. Now we mean all corporations. So we may want to just say corporation rather than C corporation, but that's a minor point. So that's just definitions. Under that provision number 6 there, and I'm looking at it on my other screen, I think it's fine. The first sentence, dwelling units owned by a C corporation. And then I think what we would do, provided, however, that rather than period, provided, however, STRs are allowed in dwelling units owned by an LLC, trust, or S corporation, what I would probably do is owned by a corporation only when every shareholder, partner, or member of the legal entity rather is a natural person. I'm not sure that helps you, because you could have a corporation that is run by natural persons that owns 150 units for investment purposes. So I'm not sure that gets you where you want. I don't know what Provincetown was thinking or what they were intending. I'm not suggesting that they screwed up or anything like that. But if what we're getting at is that, look, if you happen to have chosen a corporate form of ownership for tax reasons or whatever you want to do, because that's just how you own stuff, which is fine, then you can do an STR in it if you're the person that, either that resides at that property or in some other way. So what I say in my note to Kathy, you might want to focus on corporately owned dwellings where the principals of the corporation either reside at the dwelling or reside at the dwelling for a certain period of time or what have you, or whether they establish residence either seasonally or in a full-time capacity. So I think that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where what you're getting at is you don't want to punish someone who has chosen a corporate form of ownership. What we're trying to do is prevent big corporations from coming in and buying up 20, 30 units, more or less, and just using it for investment purposes. But I don't think what we're trying to do is catch someone up who, for legitimate estate planning reasons or tax planning reasons, chose a corporate entity to own the house that they spend every summer at, or every winter, or all year round, or what have you. So I think that's the challenge that we have in front of us, and I think we need to come up with some language if that is your intent, and I'm assuming that is your intent here in having the carve out. So we're not trying to punish small corps that reside at a place, either part-time, full-time, whatever. We're just trying to say that if you're a corporate entity involved in buying up a bunch of properties to use as STRs, that's not the kind of entity that we want owning STRs. I assume that's correct.
I think that's what we're trying to get at, for sure. And I think that the idea of whether someone needs to inhabit it seasonally, that's been something that that I think some other communities have looked at, because that's the whole point. If you own it, we want you to be using it seasonally. We want it to be part of your life. But I didn't know how difficult that would be to enforce that. But I think as we're trying to get with all this other language, I think that's becoming difficult with enforceability as well. So I think that's what we're looking for, but I don't think we got the language quite yet.
Ms. Britta?
Jay, is residency the only restriction that you think is reasonable, or is there something else we could consider that would be a little easier to enforce? I like the idea of not punishing someone if they're in a small family corporation, they own a house.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea also of requiring some occupancy requirements.
It's not
But that-
residency, because it's not their primary
Right,
residence, but it would be.
it's occupancy
excuse me.
at some point. And you're right, that's gonna be hard to enforce. Is there anything else that, instead of residency, is there another requirement that we could look at that would be easier to enforce?
Well, let's not forget too that in addition to zoning, we're having these people go through a registration process, either with the Board of Health or otherwise. And that process could require an affidavit that says that the person is going to reside, or either the person or the shareholders or the beneficiaries, or however we choose to define that, the principals of that corporation, that corporate or trust entity or whatever it is, are going to reside at the property seasonally or on a full-time basis, and make them sign an affidavit to that effect. If that's what we're trying to do, is it perfect? No. Might someone sign an affidavit and then never be there and just kind of make some dough on this? I think it's possible, and it makes it difficult, but at least we can cut down on the instances when I'm a faceless corporation and I can't sign that affidavit because I'm located in Hong Kong or, whatever, New York City, Delaware, whatever, and we're just a real estate investment trust or something like that. So I think we can get close. It'll never be perfect because poor Mark is going to be the one that has to enforce this stuff, and people can sign whatever they want, and the assessor's card can say whatever he wants, but he's not going to be policing it in terms of like, are you the owner? How many weeks did you reside here? It's really impossible. So we're going to have to choose something where we can cut it down as much as possible and then put people on the honor system. Obviously, we're going to be doing an annual registration process, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So maybe if there were incidents where someone who said I'm living there seasonally, but every week just by anecdotal evidence it was someone else, we might question them on the registration process the next time through. So,
Mr. Pendleton,
I think Jay answered my question.
your mic, so you know.
I think Jay answered my question. Maybe I just want a clarification. When we say seasonally, Jay, that could be, somebody could define that, 1 week, or they could define it as 12 weeks. Are we not in a position to say you have to be here a certain amount of time, or is that just too restrictive?
well, I don't think it's too restrictive. I think if you picked a number now, we know that summers are 3.5 to 4 months.
Right.
Pick a number if you want and do it. It could be a number of weeks a year, 8 weeks a year at least. But we could define the term seasonally, and we can do it right in that however we rewrite number 6, with the provided that they're living there at least seasonally and we could have a footnote, or we could say with seasonally being defined as residing for no less than however many weeks. And then we could even have a footnote, the registration requirements may require demonstrate, proof of that, or an affidavit along those lines, whatever we want to do there. I don't have a problem with you trying to define it. It's going to just be difficult to enforce it. But again, the idea isn't maybe necessarily that we enforce it in every instance, is that we're setting up a system where most honest arbiters are going to tell us the truth. And that's what we hope.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Yeah, can we look at the definition for owner? Because if we're starting to talk about, there's people who are not a corporation, but they currently do own multiple short-term rentals in the town of Yarmouth, and we certainly don't want people to come in and start proliferating that a lot more. So is this something where we want every owner to have some type of residency, not just C corporations, but also anybody who's defined as an owner? Because an owner is pretty wide. Any person who, alone or severally with others, directly or indirectly, has legal or equitable title or beneficial interest in any dwelling unit, a mortgagee in possession, an agent, trustee, member, or person appointed by the courts. An owner can be a single person, spouses, a group of people, an LLC, or a trust. So if we're going
We
back
may
to
want to change that LLC or trust language there, but I think the term owner, though, Kathy, may have resonance elsewhere here.
Okay.
So I think what we may be getting at is maybe adding a definition in here for seasonal residency or something like that.
That everybody has to do, not just corporations. All owners or just corporation owners? That's a question to you, Jay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, so I don't know. I mean, I think that's up to you. If we're trying to, we could have a situation where an individual owns a property, I suppose, and skirts the corporate ban by individually in their own capacity, or in a trust or something like that, owns 50 houses in Yarmouth. So we could kind of move away from the corporate thing a little bit, or in addition to the corporate thing, also, and you do have the provision that says you can't do this for investment purposes. So arguably that's going to catch up someone who's an individual owner. So we could probably do some refinements in and around there to make sure that we're kind of creating a system whereby owners who are doing it, who are in this just for investment, are more defined in a way. So that would, maybe we do that through the seasonality as well.
If I may, Jay, then we need to focus on maybe tightening up the definition area of this, or?
I would say the definitions, and through that number 6, I think the definitions we could tighten up or add to, might not even be tightening up as much as although there's some tightening up to do, maybe adding a couple of things in there, and then working on number 6
Right.
And I think the provision right below it, so that we are truly catching all of the investment-related potential applicants while not punishing folks who may legitimately live in part-time or full-time or whatever and want to make a few bucks on the side.
Right, I mean, and that's where, you know, when I go to section 7 of that, how will we know if it's solely an investment property in a residential? We just won't, it'll be, it seems to me it'll be impossible to enforce that.
It will be
But
very
that- but-
difficult.
Yeah, but the spirit of what we're trying to do here, I think, that I've heard over the past several meetings, is that that's kind of where the board is. We want, if someone wants to rent their house out for a couple of weeks a year, and it's been financially beneficial for them, yeah, that's a good thing. But for the ones that are in it for the money, so to speak, that's where it gets, that's where our neighbors who are here this evening have their concerns. And we're just trying to accommodate some kind of language, which we hope you can help us with, that keeps those protections in place for the property owner, because they have rights too, and for the you know, the whole issue about enforcement is always going to be difficult.
It's going to be difficult no matter what way we go. So all we can do is, it's not impossible because there are tools to use where we can find out, there can be some sleuthing on the sites regarding STRs. Again, we're going to have some affidavits at the time of registration, or we can do that. So we can cut down on, there's some other tools. So you all are not alone either. A lot of coastal communities in Massachusetts are wrestling with this, as well as on Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket, and they're trying to figure it out. Some of them are capping the total number of weeks you can do an STR. So there's different ways at this, I suppose. I think we can get this language a little tighter, a little more easily. I think we could probably simplify it in some respects and make it a little tighter, and then maybe handle the verification elements of it through the registration process.
Okay. Well, that's really where we're going to really need your help on this to make sure it works. Ms. Britta?
Jake, in your experience working with the other towns, what are they doing about enforcement? How are they handling the whole issue of enforcement?
Well, again, it's really imperfect, and don't forget, a lot of this is really new. In the two leading cases, the Nantucket case and the other case that came down on this, are also pretty new. So we're all trying to figure out. I do a fair bit of work on Martha's Vineyard, where this has kind of reached epidemic proportions in many respects, and they're struggling with different ways to do it while still not alienating people that may only spend a few weeks a year at their property because they live elsewhere and are trying to maybe just make a few bucks on the side. So it's a balance, but the registration process does provide some of that record keeping elements. And then we're developing, the same way you're doing here, bylaws. And as I told Kathy, I think at one point, I'm actually somewhat surprised that the Attorney General is okay with us dividing particular users by the form of corporate ownership in terms of our enforcement mechanisms, but they are, and it's kind of somewhat new. So I don't think we have a large body of evidence in terms of enforcement of those requirements. I don't think Provincetown does yet. I know Chatham is thinking about some ways to do it. We represent Chatham and some of the island towns that I do some work in. are thinking about it as well. So that's kind of where we are now. So we don't have a lot of enforcement, but we're building up towards the enforcement.
Okay. Could I just have a follow-up question, Jay? Is there any talk about, for those applicants that falsify the documents, that falsify the affidavits, is there any talk about empowering either, the building commissioner or someone in town to withhold authorization for future STR applications? Is there any, in terms of anything in that line, or are you just talking about tightening up on the definitions at
I
this
think-
point?
So the building commissioner has the authority to enforce this bylaw. This bylaw has a requirement in it. So that would be contemporaneous enforcement. In terms of future enforcement, if someone has violated for a couple years and we get wind of it, what we need to do is build in a process in that registration, which is outside of zoning, really, to kind of have a penalty provision that a violation of zoning here may be ground for rejection of a registration or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you, Jay.
I would like to point out that even though we're showing this as being a zoning bylaw, this will actually be converted into a general bylaw.
The whole thing?
The whole thing, other than in, obviously, we're going to need an article that still allows for the use. And then the footnote that says in accordance with section 418 would now say in accordance with the general bylaw. We need to allow the use in our zoning bylaw, but we want all of these things to stand in a general bylaw. It became part of that grandfathering concern. So that
Right.
if we want to start changing and the general bylaws is majority, not supermajority, so there are some advantages to that. In every other community, their short-term rentals is through a general bylaw, not through their zoning bylaw.
Yeah, and Kathy and I have talked about that quite a bit, that there's some real benefits there, in which case, once we get the classes of language that we like the best, we're probably going to want to make sure that we've got those broken out into the zoning piece, the general bylaw piece, and then the Board of Health piece, however we're doing that.
I think the Board of Health has their general bylaw that we're just referencing here. So it really would just be, they would continue doing their registration process as they've done for many, many years. But we would convert all these provisions into a general bylaw and then just allow it through the zoning bylaw as the use itself.
So if I may, unless we've got some other questions for Jay on this particular section of the to-be general bylaw, Kathy, why don't you walk us through any other changes since the last time we met?
I think it would be really helpful. I think Jay's has a lot of good ideas. I think he's getting some input from you guys on the way that you want to go. So hopefully he can help us with some more of the specific language to kind of narrow that down. The last item here on ineligible, I don't know whether the general public's aware of it. I know that the planning board is aware of it, but the state's economic bond bill that just went through the Senate included duplexes by right on all residential zoning districts that allow single-family residential. And it does allow for us to not allow those duplexes that get created, and those would be in addition to a protected use ADU that would still be allowed on any lot in town, even a non-conforming lot in town. We do have the right to ban those from being short-term rentals. I think I'd like to think the whole purpose of the governor's desire to have additional housing is to create additional year-round housing. But it seems like they're also leaving it up to each individual town in order to say, we don't want these additional housing units to be short-term rentals. I was talking to Joanne today, as I wish it was automatically they will not be short-term rentals, but if the town wanted them to be short-term rentals, then we could add that in. Because now we're scrambling, trying to make sure that we've got all these things covered. This just went through the Senate. The Senate's version was different than the House's version. They need to get together and come to some type of committee and coalesce that into a single one before it goes to the governor to sign. So who knows what it's going to end up being in the long run. I think this is better than the Yes in God's Backyard, which would have allowed 30 to 50 units per acre on religious properties by right. So this is a little bit different, but it does allow it on non-conforming lots. So if you have a 10,000 square foot lot and you can meet Title V, you can have a duplex, which now needs to be, it does a traditional duplex attached, and then you could also have a protected use ADU. So you could end up having 3 dwelling units on one lot now that has essentially been a single family. Then it got expanded to single family plus accessory. Now it's duplexes plus an accessory apartment. So-
I think this is a really important point for the public to know here and elsewhere about these elements of various bills that are on Beacon Hill. This one was in the Economic Development Bill. There's housing isn't even in the title. And all of a sudden, your neighbor could build a duplex, depending on what the rules are, and have an ADU. And it's, it just, I have my own concerns about that. That home rule, which has always been part of kind of the Constitution of Massachusetts, where towns decide what's best for them, not the state. It's unusual. 40B was probably the very first time, a long time ago, where the state came in and said, no, we need to, I'll use this only because I went to school in one of them. All the W's, the Wellesley, the Westons, the wherever else you want, never had any affordable housing. And then 40B came along a long time ago. And now it seems like we're back in that kind of era. And members of the board have expressed their concern over time, and I've expressed my concern publicly with regard to our senators, Senator Sear, with our board of select board. But this is one of those things where we're trying to catch up. We really don't know where the duplex thing is going to go. And this may all change depending on what the conference bill comes out with between the Senate and the General Court. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But we're trying to do the best we can here, and we're gonna try to move forward.
This may not be something that is, the law won't have been passed, so we don't know whether it's actually going to be in it by the time we have to go to town meeting, special town meeting. Kind of leaving it in here as a caveat, depending on how quickly they move things along and whether we can include it in that. If not, it may be something that we have to include at annual town meeting, just to make sure that those don't turn into short-term rentals. But I just have it in here as kind of a little place mark for us for the near future, see how that goes.
So why don't you continue, Kathy? I
Sure.
didn't mean to get up on my soapbox
No,
there.
I've been on a soapbox myself on this one. I guess this is the 418.5 limitations of number of short-term rentals. I think this is where I wanted to get some input, some additional input from Jay on this as well. Right now, we're just saying no owner shall register more than one dwelling unit as a short-term rental in the town of Yarmouth. So we want to make sure that people who've already invested can continue doing what they're doing, because it doesn't seem as though it's particularly egregious at this point, what's been happening. We just don't want to continue with the proliferation of it. So we added in a second item there. Owners who hold a valid 2026 rental certificate on more than one short-term rental may continue to register more than one short-term rental until the property is sold or transferred. I just want to make sure that that language is sufficient, and if we're starting to say a bunch of ineligible, we want to understand people that this would grandfather you, that those ineligible units are going on in the future. So I was interested in some input from Jay on that.
So I just need to get like a nod, a wink and a nod from everybody on that, so Kathy can go forward with that provision.
Oh, I just want to hear what Jay has to say.
Yeah, Jay as well. Mr. Chalaman.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will pass muster with the municipal law unit. It is only one is maybe somewhat draconian, and I could see that at one point it was two
Right.
in there. So I leave it up to you. I don't think it's a problem from a bylaw perspective in terms of what will get past the municipal law unit of the Attorney General's office. It just comes down to policy as to whether or not you think one is too tough on folks or not. I think that's a policy question for this board, not really a legal question for me.
I think it's highlighted in gray because we weren't really sure, and I think we're looking to get some additional input from the public, especially as we move to the public hearing. But I guess I was more interested in the language of the second one, of making sure that that language is sufficient to grandfather people who have already been doing the short-term rentals. To Jay.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I think that the language is fine.
Okay, that's what I was looking for.
I have no problem limiting them to one. I don't think that's, we might as well ask for what we want, and if they say no, then we get knocked back to something else, but I would not, I don't even know what the right number is, but one sounds great. Let them start with one, and if, I don't know why it's a policy question, as Jay said. It's a
Yeah,
policy
it's not a
question.
legal question.
Yeah, and given the density in our town, and our concern with water and the wastewater, I have no problem with one at all.
Okay. Other members of the board,
Good.
opinion?
I'm good.
Mr. Pendleton, thank you.
I'm good either way. I think one is fine. I wouldn't.
Yeah,
be
one's
too
good,
opposed to
one is
two.
good with me as well.
So you could go either way, you're one and you're,
One, yeah.
I feel like I'd rather get the pushback.
Yeah.
Go
Slap-
low.
Get slapped around.
Go low and have somebody say no.
Right. And give us a reason why they're saying no. Okay.
Well, this is another question. Mark, do we know how many people might have more than one? We have no idea.
No, I didn't bring it with me.
So when they register, the owner, sorry. Right now, even the registration system with the state and with you, we don't know how many they own.
Didn't keep track. I could pull the information up if I needed it, but I didn't bring it tonight.
No, I'm not asking,
Yeah.
but it is available.
I can create a report in OpenGov to be able to pull up their name to come up in a report.
Maybe we should, would you mind? Maybe we should take, I don't know, maybe we should take a look at it.
yeah, the only problem would be like if it is an LLC and they have different names on the LLCs, you'd have to go into the Secretary of State.
The only other problem is that Delmar is a management company,
right.
and they register them, so it might come
We're
up
gonna have
with,
multiples for them.
right,
Absolutely.
and that might not be the same owner, so it wouldn't be very accurate information.
Yeah, okay.
We might want to add there, whether by the definition of owner or in this section, to catch kind of the checkerboarding elements here, where it would be just a separate corporate entity, but which is substantially related to the owner. So I could, for $300 or whatever the cost is at the Secretary of State, I can set up an LLC and I can control 100 different LLCs and have that own 100 different properties. So we may want to make sure when we're going back and cleaning up the sections that we just talked about a few minutes ago, that we figure out a way to make sure that they can't circumvent this limitation by just forming a whole bunch of corporate entities there. I mean, we're going to catch it in other ways too, perhaps, but we should probably figure out a way to factor that into the definition.
Again, Jay, I think that's where we're going to need some help from you. I think that's as much as a policy question as a legal question. But I think you're getting a sense from the board that a family renting their house is okay. Corporations renting houses is not where we want to be.
Yep.
I think P-Town actually had some good information. You know, they had limited it to no more than 2 short-term rentals. They say no person shall have more than 2 legal or equitable title or beneficial interest in dwelling units used for short-term rentals. So maybe something along those lines, Jay?
Yeah, that's something along those lines.
With regard to parking, I think you had just asked the question with regard to whether we're setting a maximum. What we've been finding is that even though we say you need to have one parking space per bedroom, lots of times people never say, well, we only have the available parking for four cars, even though we have a 5-bedroom. So somehow you need to identify that there's 4 cars that can be parked overnight on that property. And when we were meeting with the housing inspectors, they indicated that when they go and do their inspections, they can also identify, in addition to looking at the occupancy and the safety things, they can also say, oh yeah, you have the ability to have four cars within your driveway, and then document that as well, so that we're getting a better handle on the number of cars people can have. I think a lot of times, because of the way they are listed, people genuinely, just good-naturedly renting a short-term rental, they don't realize that they're in violation of our zoning bylaw because of the way it's been advertised. They don't say anything about how many cars you can bring, so everybody brings a car. And then they don't say necessarily the occupancy, they just say the number of sleeping. So we're trying to get a better handle on that. So that's what that maximum number was about, just kind of answering Jay's question about that. Occupancy, I think this is just a clarification, and we had talked about that before, that the maximum overnight occupancy, and that's from 11 to 7, is the occupancy that gets set by the building or the health departments. And that's kind of regardless of how many bedrooms you have or the places to sleep, like beds, sofas, cots, bunk beds, et cetera, provided in the short-term rental. Just to be clear, there's a difference between occupancy and sleeping spaces in there. So I don't know if anyone had any comments on that. I don't. And Jay, feel free to chirp in if there's something that you have concerns about. Jay had a question about RV campers and sleeping tents, kind of like where that would be, and just trying to clarify that we don't want you using any of those items as short-term rentals or sleeping spaces. I think because this is going to be a general bylaw, we included this whole section with regard to penalties enforcement, because it's not going to be the typical enforcement if it had been a zoning bylaw through Chapter 40A. So we'd included this additional information, and I'd asked Jay to take a real close look at suspension, revocations, and non-renewal. We did make some changes to that based on comments from the last meeting that we had. We changed it from 3 or more violations within a calendar year instead of the 6 months period to kind of hit those shoulder seasons where you guys were kind of identifying as being more of the problem areas. And then when we met with the town staff, with the housing inspectors, they clarified that, and with Mark, that they do the rental certificate, and that's something that can be determined if they're in violation by the building commissioner and then appeal to the select board. But if somebody's certificate of inspection, that's done through the building code, so that would be something that would have to be appealed to the Mass Building Code Appeals Board. So I think, Jay, you had a question about this. Could this be regular zoning enforcement? I think because it's building code and not zoning, it would have to go to the building code. Okay.
Yeah, so we could set up just regular enforcement as well as non-criminal disposition. We have equitable enforcement. I don't love the idea of multiple levels of local appeal, just because it takes so long, and by the time the dust settles, we can talk about that. I would rather, we can give people some amount of recourse on this. If we're waiting for multiple hearings and then they have recourse in courts, I'm not sure if that helps us that much, because we'll be endlessly fighting these things. Maybe we could have something a little more streamlined that cuts down on some of this. We could do kind of almost like a staff level review.
Well,
There's other ways, especially with the general bylaw, where we can design our own enforcement mechanism.
Right.
There's other ways at this, I think.
I think the enforcement mechanism is in here with regard to the rental certificate. You're going to have your violations, that's going to be determined by the building commissioner. But we didn't want to just make Mark king of the short-term rentals. It's not fair to him either, so that if somebody really felt like they weren't being treated fairly, we wanted to give them some type of appeals, and that would be to the select board. I would think most of the time, the rental certificate, and this is something Mark can answer, the rental certificate is the thing that would be revoked, or could easily be revoked, instead of the certificate of inspection. But the certificate of inspection, isn't that something that this is standard anyway? If you revoked a certificate of inspection, they could appeal it to the, so do we need to put that last sentence in at all, I guess?
Hi, Jay. I'm sure you're aware the short-term rental section of the building code was added this past code cycle Chapter 110. It's the table, the annual inspection requirement. And short-term rentals are now required by the building code as of a year ago to receive a annual inspection and pass that inspection in order to receive a certificate of inspection. Yarmouth has had for some time a rental certificate which we maintained. So we get both. We get a certificate of inspection and a rental certificate for short-term rentals, and then regular rentals, they get their rental certificate from the Board of Health. So I don't know. I would just yank the CI and then tell them to vacate or stop the use.
Yeah, I don't think we have to put it in the bylaw here.
No, it's in the building
because
code.
You're covered under other grounds.
Right. It's
So
in the
maybe
building
that
code.
last sentence just goes all together. The one that says,
The revocation of a certificate of inspection. Yeah,
okay.
Where is that again?
Oh, at the top of page 5?
Suspension and non-renewal rental certificate. Okay, got it.
And then I guess the effective date, I think it needs to be the same as the zoning. This was a question a little bit for Jay. The sunset clause goes through November 30th, 2026, but one of the things that we're going to do, and we had talked a little bit about this, was having multiple articles related to the short-term rentals on the special town meeting. We would have the general bylaw would come first, and hopefully, if that passes, then we would have the zoning bylaw one, which would basically eliminate, this section and just allow the use through the use table and a note saying refer to in accordance with the general bylaw. But if for some reason the general bylaw doesn't pass, we still want to make sure that we don't lose our rights to short-term rentals. We do get a lot of benefits from them. We get a lot of money in excise tax that we're using for our wastewater program. We want to continue that. So we'd have a third one if the general bylaw failed, where we would just extend the sunset clause. Obviously, if it failed, then we didn't get something right, and maybe we need to take another look at it and figure things out a little bit more and get an additional time to do that. And how long that would be is, I think I was looking for some input from Jay on that. But it seems like the effective date of this general bylaw needs to somehow match the effective date of the zoning bylaw that then
Yeah.
formally allows the use.
that's right, because they're going to get approved by the Attorney General at the same time. So the general bylaw, the zoning bylaw's effective date is going to be retroactive to the date of town meeting. But they're going to, if they're submitted to the Attorney General at the same time, they're all going to get approved at the same time. So it might be kind of the reverse, Kathy,
Okay.
because the general bylaw will be effective, the actual effective date will be when the Attorney General approves it.
Oh, it's not retroactive, okay.
It's not retroactive. The zoning will be effective retroactively. Now, that whole thing about retroactivity is really not particularly worrisome because no one's going to use it necessarily because it's not an actual bylaw until the Attorney General approves it anyway. It's just kind of retroactive, maybe for grandfathering purposes or what have you. But I'm not super worried about that. We can sync them up, but it may not be something we have to worry about that much because they're going to be submitted in one package to the municipal law unit.
Right. So this effective date that I have listed here is the process that would be related to a zoning bylaw, not necessarily a general bylaw, because that's when the Attorney General actually approves it, which is typically, can be up to 120 days after town meeting.
Well, it's 90 days after.
30 days
well,
to
it's
submit
90
it and
days
then
after
90 days.
submittal.
Yeah.
Right. So if it takes 30 days to submit, then 90, yes. So it's 120.
And they typically have been taking to the 120. We take the 30 and they take the 90.
Well, then they asked around ADUs, they asked for massive extensions too. So the AG's office on these more novel zoning things have been pushing out their 90-day limit by requested extensions.
So you're not too concerned about the fact that technically, we may have a zoning bylaw that just says, allows the use with no provisions in it, because all the provisions are now in the general bylaw that gets approved by the AG later, same time as when the zoning gets, but it's not retroactive to special town meeting.
Right, but for all practical purposes, the zoning bylaw is approved by town meeting and it's going to say an effective date as of the town meeting date, but we're not really going to be using the new bylaw until the AG approves it anyway. So I'm not super concerned about that.
So it seems like we should change that effective date language, though. That's in here.
Yeah, or get rid of it. I mean, we might not need it at
Oh,
all.
I see your point, okay.
So if I understand, the zoning bylaw change, and Kathy prepared this flow chart for us tonight.
You're the only one that can have it.
I'm the only one who has it? Thank you, Kathy.
I'm sorry, here it is.
that-
You're special, Joanne. We were talking
Thank
about
you.
it today.
Thank you. The change to the bylaw is merely to eliminate what's in the bylaw.
Liam, can you show the slide so that Jay can see it? Thank you.
So I'm on the, well, I'm looking at it and I'm going to call it the port side of the
That
chart.
doesn't help me at all.
It's not the starboard side, it's the port side. The second step there. All that is like a little correction saying, oh, by the way, this isn't in here anymore. Go to the general bylaw.
Right.
But we have to have an amendment to essentially do that in the zoning bylaw.
Correct.
Okay, so it's like we're whiting out what's in the zoning bylaw, moving it to the general bylaw. But in order to do that, we need to have an
Permission to white
article
out,
at
yeah.
town meeting to white it out.
To
And
remove it
make a
from the-
note.
To
Make a
modify it in the zoning bylaw. Jay hasn't seen this, but this is what I'd sent a couple emails kind of saying, this is what I thought the process would need to be. But I always want to have the backup. If for some reason the general bylaw doesn't pass, I don't want the sunset clause to expire. So maybe we would just have that cover our butt Article 3 that basically extends the sunset clause so we can think about it a little bit longer. And I don't know, Jay, whether you have any recommendations on the length of time. I mean, when was this done originally? In 2022? 2022. So we've extended it 4 years. We had the sunset clause in place for 4 years. We extended it, I think it was originally 2 years or something, and we extended another 2 years. So we've already extended it so it's a total of 4 years already. Does the AG have a problem?
Yeah, I mean, you can keep doing that. So,
We could.
At
I
some
mean,
point,
you
though,
can
you
do
need,
year to year, 2 years. I mean, that's not, again, that's more of a policy question.
okay,
We know
so,
it takes time to put together changes here. So 2 years might make more sense than 1 year, but
I would never
again,
do 1
policy
year.
question. Yeah.
never do 1 year, Jay. I'm thinking, 2 or 3. I mean, if we didn't get it right this time, I think we're very close. I think we put a lot of thought into it. UMass Donahue Institute did a good job on their report. Certainly been talking about it for like over a year now with that study. I think we're in good shape. But it's just a case of, but typically I thought the sunset clauses were so that you could do some additional study, so that you didn't want to have a sunset clause so far out that it didn't make any sense. Is that not true?
Sorry, what was the question?
Typically, I mean, what we had indicated before when we had the sunset clause was that we wanted it, and we did want it initially because it was done very, very quickly because of that Styler case, where they had started questioning
Right.
whether short-term rentals are an actual accessory use or an allowed use in a residential zoning district. So we ended up doing it fairly quickly, and we knew that we weren't positive we got it right, so we had a 2-year sunset clause. And then we added an additional 2 years. But we always said it was because we wanted to do more detailed planning process related to short-term rentals. Is there a reason, do you need that reason for extending a sunset clause, that you're going to be doing more study? Or could you just say, we just want a
No,
sunset clause
I
because?
mean, yeah, I think that, we kind of borrow that language from the moratorium cases a little bit to do more study. I think we're extending the sunset clause and including that language just so folks know that we're working hard to do this. And so I don't think there's a legal requirement that we give a reason. on it, but I think it helps people understand that we're trying to work this out.
Okay. Anything else on this from members of the board or Kathy?
Does this layout make sense to you? Like I said, I know, Jay, that I had sent this to you in an email with the 3 different articles.
Yeah, it's fine. I think it's going to come down to just what it says. Obviously, in the zoning bylaw, it's going to be to delete a bunch of language and probably replace it or amend some language. And then the general bylaws can be more of a blank canvas that will work on. But I mean, that order of operations works. Could we think of a hypothetical whereby general passes and zoning fails? I think it's entirely possible.
And you'd have 2
I mean,
conflicting bylaws.
Zoning's a 2/3.
Mr. Grills?
Hi, Jay, Mark Rills. If zoning doesn't provide for the short-term rentals, then short-term rentals are prohibited.
That's correct.
Yeah, so essentially, I guess you would be, if it fails, you just end up having provisions, 2 very different provisions, or somewhat similar, but not really. So what would govern, Jay? If you had 2 separate provisions for for short-term rentals, one in a general bylaw and one in the zoning bylaw?
More restrictive governs. If they conflicted,
So the
there
general
was
would then
the
go.
more restrictive would govern.
Well, that's good news.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? I don't see any hands raised, Mark. Yes, please, come up. If you could introduce yourself and where you live.
Diane Daw, Webster Road in West Yarmouth. And town council might be able to address this. I had 2 questions before the meeting this evening. We've talked about the rental registration application for the town of Yarmouth, and we've talked about the state DOR certification numbers and the Yarmouth short-term rental certification numbers. And we know there's a tough time matching them up because the state does not reveal the address, the house number. It will list 17 rentals on Tanglewood Drive, but it doesn't tell you the house numbers. I've gone through and matched up a few in the Colonial Acres neighborhood because there is at least one of the rental sites, and I'm not positive which one it is this evening. I think it's We Need a Vacation, that will list the state cert number on their ad on the website. So my question would be, on the Yarmouth rental registration, is there anything prohibiting you from asking the owner to put down their state certificate number? Because if they don't have a state certificate, the state is not sending the excise tax to Yarmouth.
Going to defer to our building commissioner, maybe?
We actually discussed that in one of our meetings, and we are going to consider adding that, and perhaps if you have a listing with Airbnb or VRBO, getting their listing number on the application as well. So that's something that we considered.
Okay, and the other part was the acknowledgement statement at the bottom. And I know we all, in a perfect world, everyone would be honest. But I hereby acknowledge that I have thoroughly reviewed, I am fully familiar with the following regulations, and then it lists the laws. You could sign that you've read it and you understand it, does not necessarily mean you're going to abide by it and follow those guidelines. So, and town council used the word affidavit. Is there any way to add a language or give it a little bit more teeth so that it represents your word under penalty of some law?
Mr. Shalman, can you help us with this one?
Well, people are signing affidavits under pains and penalties of perjury. If they sign an affidavit falsely, then that would be grounds for revocation. We're not going to be suing people individually under theories of contract or anything like that. At most, we'd be revoking certificates or doing enforcement. We're not in the business of like the business world of misrepresentation and this and that. We would just use a false statement as a grounds for revocation.
Okay, at the bottom here, further down, it does say that failure to do so may result in the imposition of fines or fees. But I read that to be just that last little paragraph. So I think what I'm asking is if the registration application could be made more of an affidavit, that you are signing it under, if it is proven that something is false, that your license to rent could be fined or revoked. Thank you.
Mr. Talman, can you help us with that one?
Yeah, that's just a matter of adding that line on the registration application form. I'm not, the undersigned certifies under pains of penalties of perjury that all the statements herein are true. Penalties for making false statements may be grounds for revocation. That's just, we add that to a form when it comes time for that. That's not really something we have to do here in the bylaw, though.
Right.
That could be,
But we could add that, Mark?
that
Yeah.
would be practice.
Okay. We will look to do that. Thank you. We will look to, yeah. We got to, who's joining us remotely?
Oh, is that John Ray?
Your name, please?
Hi, my name is Jack Ray.
Jack.
And I am an owner of a short-term rental on Webster Road. I think it's one that people have talked about here, the 47 Webster. I know that Don and I think it was Diane live nearby. I know is the subject of some conversations over the last couple planning boards. So a little late to the party, and I don't know if you can see me, and I'm sorry I'm having to zoom in. But I just wanted to give a few comments, and can you all hear me?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
great. So my wife and I own 47 Webster Road, and we do rent it out when we are not there visiting with our family. We have a couple small children, and so we are there less than I would like to be there, because that's a season of our life. I've done my best to kind of try to catch up on the conversation that's been happening over the last many months. I guess I'll start by apologizing to my neighbors for I know there was a party there, and I've talked to Mark at length about it. I hate that probably more than they did, because those guys trashed my house, and it's not something that I want. I don't think it's anything any short-term rental operator wants. And so I think that there's been a lot of input from people in the community who dislike short-term rentals and the problems with them. But there's not been a ton of input, at least that I've seen, from people who own short-term rentals and want to be responsible short-term rental owners and be good neighbors. And that's, I hope, what I am, is that person that, wants regulation. I think regulations are good. I think it helps everyone to be able to function by having good rules here. And so I've been listening to conversations here, and I guess I have a couple comments on things that we've been talking about. I've been taking notes on the corporate restrictions and a couple of suggestions there. And then I guess a couple of questions on the occupancy cap. I'll start with the corporate restrictions, which is what we've been talking about. It seems that there's two different issues here. One is trying to avoid avoid owning lots of short-term rentals. Some corporation, the hypothetical corporation that comes in and owns 20 short-term rentals. And the other is kind of avoiding investment in short-term rentals in general. I think that the former is easily solved by the limitation on the number of short-term rentals. And so to simply say you can only have one or you can only have two, whatever number you come up with, I think solves that problem. My wife and I own our short-term rental in an LLC for reasons that I don't fully understand. I'm a lawyer, but I've deferred, and I still don't really fully understand the legal reasons why, you know, the lawyer or the realtor said, you know, you should put it in an LLC. But I understand that it shields some liability. And so I think that people like us are not the people that you want to be stopping. You want to be stopping the large conglomerates from buying up 20 houses on a street and turning it into, you know, the Vacasa, zoo. And so I think that the way you do that is you limit the number of short-term rentals. In terms of kind of worrying about people that are, having multiple LLCs and trying to circumvent it that way, or multiple corporations or something to that effect. You know, when we file things in federal court, there's a corporate disclosure statement that you have to have. And I'll butcher the language, but it says something to the effect of, you need to state that if you're, corporation A and other corporations own part of you or other non-natural persons, you need to list all of them out. And so that we know, who's really at interest here. Something like that could be language that you can pull, and I'm happy to circulate something similar to that. And it sounds like the P-Town language is pretty good in that regard. And so I'll just flag that there, that I think that what you're trying to do is you're trying to stop people from having a corporate buying up a street. I totally get that. That makes a lot of sense. I think you just want to avoid the people like me who are putting things into a LLC. In terms of kind of forcing people to live there for a certain period of time, I do think it's hard to enforce. I know that there's a number of, I think, tax provisions and mortgage provisions where if you have a second home, essentially, you have to be there for 2 weeks a year. That might be language that people already are doing for, or documenting for tax purposes. It might just be an easy thing that you can layer on and steal from. So I'll pause there before kind of talking about the other, occupancy comments. If anyone, has thoughts, or if Council Talon does.
If I can make a suggestion, the language that you talked about with regard to kind of the family LLC, if you could send that to Kathy Williams in writing, that would
Sure.
be very helpful.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. And then I guess the other comments I had were on occupancy caps. I'm struggling to understand, based on my understanding of having an occupancy cap, the thought was that it would avoid septic issues and parties and parking issues. Are those the things that are really animating occupancy caps?
I think there's multiple different things when we say occupancy. There is the overnight occupancy, which is set by the health department based on Title V. And that's based on those requirements, and they set that overnight occupancy. We had been talking about maybe also setting a maximum occupancy at any time to be twice that level, but we really felt like there's a lot of different short-term rentals that have 5 or 6 or 7 bedrooms, and if you're doubling those, if you happen to allow 2 per bedroom, so that's 14 times 2, that's 28, that's a lot of people, and that's a party, and it really conflicts with the part of the bylaw that basically says this is for residential uses. This is not meant for parties. You cannot have large events at a short-term rental in the town of Yarmouth. So if it's overnight occupancy, that's set by the health department by Title V, that's not changing, and it's a function of the size of your bedrooms and your septic system and a lot of other things.
Okay, I understand that. So I'm embarrassed to say how deep of a dive I did on Title V yesterday, and perhaps I'm just a legal nerd. But I guess I'd like to, and I don't want to get too much into it now. I'd like to basically send you the research that I've done on Title V and kind of occupancy rules. The short of it is I don't think that Title V does not contain an occupancy limit. It seems that over time, in the interpretation of it or in the understanding of it, it limits bedrooms. And so, and I know that you all know that it limits the number of bedrooms and 110 gallons, flow. But I don't think there's a basis in Title V to limit occupancy. Now, the state sanitary code does have that limitation. And so I guess what I was thinking of doing, if it would make sense for the board, would be to submit kind of some, pass along that law to you and kind of submit a write-up of where I think the occupancy limits come from. And I think it's a little bit different and sadly a little bit more complex than just 2 per bedroom. But I think it makes a little bit more sense. It's based on kind of square footage of different rooms.
Yes. Bedrooms, like if you have a 70 square foot bedroom, that's one person.
Yep.
You need to like have a 100 square foot bedroom to have 2 people. So there, that is something. But we do reference Title V, so maybe if we also need to reference the sanitary code as well, then that's something that we can do on in the section there. about
Okay, so
occupancy.
we can, referencing the sanitary code would clarify that beyond just the occupancy and the bedrooms, if I am understanding you, Kathy.
We can talk to the housing inspectors as well, because we don't do that. I don't do that. So get a little bit more clarity from them on how they do that.
And I guess what what I'd like to do is, and I kind of started writing up my thoughts and things like that, and I'm on a family vacation this week, and so that's why I'm zooming in from sunny Binghamton, New York. But I guess what I'd like to do is, I know that we're going to be discussing this again in 2 weeks. I'd like to try to come in person, work allowing, and kind of in advance submit some of the information that I've found on occupancy. And I guess I'm just not sure that occupancy limits are the right solution to the problems that we've been talking about, which I think are real concerns that we should address. But it seems like occupancy limits might not be it might be a blunt object when more tailored solutions might be more effective. And, occupancy limits hurt the town in certain ways, where there's fewer people coming and there's less tax revenue and all that stuff. So if that makes sense, I don't want to take up too much time today with my pontification, but maybe I could submit something in writing and then talk more again in a couple weeks.
We really appreciate your comments, and whatever you could commit to writing and send to Kathy Williams would be most appreciated. And we look forward to seeing you maybe in 2 weeks.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Yes.
Good evening, Don Palaya. I live directly across from 47 Webster Road. And Mr. Ray, thanks for calling in. I did get your email. I haven't ignored it, but I've got some just biting my tongue. I don't really think of Mr. Ray as a neighbor, and I don't mean this confrontationally, but I think of Mr. Ray as the principal of an LLC across the street from me who wants to rent a property to 20 people at a time. And he just says occupancy doesn't hurt, it's good for the town. Well, it may be good for, I don't know, it's good for him, but it's not good for the neighborhood, because the whole purpose of this, let me quote this here, is to protect and maintain the residential character of existing neighborhoods. You're not doing that when you got 20 people in one house. That's all I'm going to say about that. So on top of page 2, I got one question. Short-term rentals, STR, defined as owner-occupied, tenant-occupied, or non-owner-occupied. What does tenant-occupied mean?
Someone who's renting?
Well, somebody who's renting shouldn't be able to sublet an STR, should they? I don't get that one.
I think this actually comes from Mass General Law. We can certainly double check that, but I don't think we didn't make that up.
Okay. I like the talks about capping the number of weeks that could be done. I know a lot of the towns out west, Colorado, places like that, they've struggled with this as well. So I see capacity has gone away. We're just talking now about occupancy. What happened to the no more, at one time there was a thing that said you couldn't, the way it's currently written, you could have 100 people there during the day.
No, you can't have a party.
But right now, the way the bylaws.
No, the way it's written right now is you cannot do that.
Okay, so,
Residential uses only, no large events, and then there's a whole laundry list of the different events that you can't have. If you have 100
Right.
people there, you're obviously in violation of that section of the bylaw.
well, when I called about that party that Mr. Ray has taken action to prevent in the future, which is good, I thank him for that. When I called about that, and I talked to Mr. Lewis at the Board of Health, he kind of chuckled and he says, and he laughed and he says, there's nothing I can do, unfortunately, about how many people are there during the day. It's at night. The only thing that he could enforce was at night.
Because that's a health regulation. So he's the health department, yes. This happens to be in the zoning bylaw, and it's enforced by the building department.
So this occupancy limit, how do we word it here? We say occupancy,
Page Z.
what
you were in
page is
favor
the
of-
occupancy on?
Yes. Wasn't it? It's on the,
Top of page 4. Maximum overnight occupancy from 11 to 7. But then it says nothing about occupancy during the day. Is that,
we originally had at no other time during the
Right.
use of the, but then, like I was saying, that
that's gone?
But if you just scroll down
Yeah,
to types of rentals, they're for residential use only. No large-scale events, included but not limited to weddings, corporate events, graduation, fraternity, sorority, bridal, or bachelor parties, class, family reunions.
but if they have a birthday party and a picnic and 30 cars show up, that's okay?
That's a party.
That's a party.
That's a party, I know.
That's what I think.
At the
Mark,
last
help
meeting,
me.
we had it in there.
We would call that a large-scale event.
At the last meeting it was in there, you had a daytime limit. This
we
meeting, it
did.
seems to be gone.
And it was twice that, and we had a whole, I'm sorry, I
No,
thought
you
you
took
were
it
also
out.
in
You-
favor
you-
of eliminating it.
you
Maybe
said
I
it was-
misunderstood. But we were concerned that there would be in conflict. So if we said twice the maximum, and all of a sudden we're saying you can have up to 28 people there during the day, that's in conflict with the fact that we don't want you to have 28 people there, because
Correct.
then you're having a party. So we ended up taking it out and let the use, the type of use, govern.
Okay, because I thought
It's
at
the
the end
type
of,
it's important to understand, and this, and Kathy is really, and Mark are experts on this. It's the type of use, and we want to leave that language as flexible as we can for enforcement. And that's
Okay.
the idea behind it.
I
If you put a number in there, if the house is 1,000 square feet and they've got 30 people, then the number is what's going to control, not the event. So we're trying to move in the direction where we can at least try to enforce the event. That's our mission.
I get it. I know, at the end of the last meeting, I thought it was left that it was going to just say maximum occupancy at any time is what the occupancy was. That's,
No, that was
all
not.
right, then I was misunderstood. Getting down to the rental certificate, I mean, I hear now that we have a workforce shortage and we don't have enough people to do inspections and we don't have the workforce right now to do the enforcement or half the work that needs to get done. So I'm wondering if maybe the best way to do the rental permits would be to have a rolling, let them just roll and renew as they go, like your driver's license does or your car registration does. Because you get to the December 31st and it's expired, well, there's a lot of places that rent New Year's Eve, so December 31st, boom, it's expired. They're there New Year's Eve, what do? Leave? Now you're out of compliance. Martin Luther King Day weekend, that's a big shoulder weekend. Valentine's Day is a big shoulder event. February vacations is a shoulder event. So if you had rolling renewals, maybe based upon the issue date of the safety inspection, a past safety inspection, and you listed your database by expiration dates, it would take the workload off of the building department. Because right now, if you've got 900 rentals or 800 rentals, and it's going to take you at least an hour to process travel time, make out a report, fill it, file it, scan it, put it into the database, you're crunching. You got 900, let's say you got 900 inspections. Put a time study on that. Is each one an hour? That's 900 hours. That's almost 6 months' work. So you're compressing all that in the first month or two of the season, and it's killing his workload, because now, I got to run here, I got to run there. So maybe you should take those renewals and let it go like your license and sort it by that, and spread those inspections out over the year. And it would also give you a better handle on who's not renewing, because you would see, this guy's expired, but he hasn't reapplied. Oh, let's see if he's still renting. Oh, I got his verbo right here. I could go see if he's still renting. And then the guy's in violation. So just something that might make your workload easier. And that's about it. I have one other question. Mr. Slovak advocated for taking a little bit of the money from the excise tax and hiring an STR officer. Which department would be responsible for that, or be suggesting that, or bringing it to the board, or?
Mr. Grills?
What's the process of
The
adding a
short-term
position?
building, the short-term rentals section of the building code is enforceable by a building official or someone who I deem fit to do the job. So I have a guy right now that does it, he's testing to become a certified building official. So the enforcement of the building code comes from a building official, the enforcement of the health regulation comes from the health agent.
Oh, I understand that. I'm asking, what's the process of approving a new position dedicated just to an STR? Does that have to go before the select
Go through the
board?
Personnel board, you need to get appropriations
Yeah.
to town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
You need the authority to take the money out of the
That's,
fine and give it to Mark's department. That's really what
it
it
all
is,
has
isn't
to
it?
go through the
Right.
annual town meeting
Right.
when all the budgets are decided.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, but it has to go through the
And
process.
No, I
we have
just
done
want-
it once before, I think, at least
We got
once.
we got the current one in place.
That's
for
how,
this-
that's
for
how we
this
got the one
reason,
that we
right.
have now.
Oh, you have?
Takes a while.
We only had one at one time, now we have two.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you very
welcome.
much.
Thank you for your comments, we appreciate it. Anyone else? I don't see any hands raised. Mark? Okay. Kath, do you have enough to work with on this?
If Jay helps
Anything else
me,
with
yes.
Jay? Hi, Jay, we haven't forgotten about you.
I think it's good to have this conversation, Jay, to hear exactly from you guys also where you're all coming from. It helps formulate the language as
Yeah.
well.
Next on our agenda this evening are, again, a proposed article for accessory apartments, which will now be called accessory dwelling units, as per the state. Kathy, you want to walk us through this? And I know Mr. Talaman and his staff have commented on this as well.
Again, what you have is got Jay's
Again,
comments.
thank you very much for coming, we appreciate it.
So one of the questions that I had originally had, it sounds like because of the state regulations that now mandate accessory apartments by right, we need to modify our bylaw to match those regulations. Just basically 760 CMR 71, protected use accessory dwelling units. They basically require you to allow accessory dwelling units in every zoning district that you allow single-family dwelling units. So I've modified wherever we had BA, which was a special permit from the Board of Appeals, or no, we had to say a yes if we allowed the single-family dwelling in there. My question to Jay was, did we have to allow it in overlay districts? And it might say that we could I don't know, do it in the overlay as well, unless the rules for single-family units are exactly the same as in the underlying district. I think they are, but I don't have at this point any concerns with saying yes in HMOD 1 and 2 to allow. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
This is on the table, Kathy, in the overlay districts,
Yep.
yeah. Any concerns there by members of the board? Okay.
Sorry, just let me get through my things. Under principal dwelling, this was just a note that I had to the planning board to let them know that the way they define a principal dwelling isn't just a single-family home, it's also a duplex, a triple-decker or multifamily structure and includes pre-existing non-conforming structures. That's just the way they have written it. Jay had a comment that this definition, which this mimics, is flawed. And I don't disagree. A principal dwelling usually means one, not all of this, but I don't think there's anything we can particularly do about it. I don't know if
I'm not
Jay-
sure I understand Jay's comment. The definition which this mimics is flawed. What?
I'm assuming the standard principal dwelling definition doesn't normally include all of that.
It was a editorial comment that the
Sorry,
state
Jay.
I wrote
did an
agreed, but there's
abysmal
nothing we can
job defining things. Like my issue with that, I think where they say, and I'm trying to find the exact comment, a structure regardless of whether it or the lot it is situated on conforms to zoning. Well, but the problem with that is if you read elsewhere in the regs, it doesn't have to conform to zoning for it to still be entitled to ADU treatment. It's fine leaving it in. We don't have to include any of these definitions that are just cut and pasted from the state regs. I think it's helpful in some instances for property owners that may want to do an ADU that we're repeating them here, but we don't have to. I think Kathy inserted them just because it's helpful to the users of the bylaw, but those are defined terms anyway.
I agree, and we didn't include all the definitions, one that I didn't feel
Right.
necessarily were applicable, we didn't include. And we even, in the short-term rentals, I just said as defined in Mass General Law, and just left it at that.
Yeah, I think wherever we can, just reference the state law. I mean, they've completely taken this out of our hands, essentially,
They have.
more or less.
I just don't want anybody confusing anything that a transit station is referring just to the, I don't know, we ever talk about it
No.
again later, I want it to
Yeah.
be clear that they've defined it as something very, very specific. And then I did eliminate those extra definitions that Jay had mentioned, which made a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
and my only concern sometimes when we do, and it's a mild concern, because I'm not fighting against including definitions that we don't have to include, but we're doing just to be clear, is if the state gets around to changing their
Right.
definitions, which are in state regs, then we're stuck with them unless we go back to town meeting. So that's sometimes why I get concerned.
Yep, that's a good point.
I don't disagree, hence the definition of variance, which no longer is applicable. Basically, there's the list of the ineligible, that's no longer possible, we can't include any of these, so those are being eliminated. I think the good thing here that Jay did clarify, because I wasn't sure that if somebody already had an ADU on their property before this law came into effect in February of 2025, could they also get, in addition to that, a by right protected? And it sounds like based on, you can correct me here, Jay, it sounds like based on the way you've written it, only one ADU or other accessory dwelling unit, whether protected or otherwise, shall be allowed as of right on a lot containing a principal dwelling unit in a single-family residential zoning district. And he was also okay with leaving in the no variance shall be permitted from this
Yeah,
requirement.
I'm definitely fine with that because we can prohibit use variances where we see fit under.
Can you for residential, though?
Sure.
What was the new change in the,
We're still
budget.
allowed to prohibit use variances under the new change.
under the, I thought it was we couldn't, oh, you can still prohibit? I thought if it was for residential, it had a whole different
Hang
flavor
on,
to it.
let me check.
I'm, in all honesty, I can't keep up, Jay.
Hold on, I'm looking at it right now.
It's comforting to hear you say you can't. I can't. Makes me cry. Sure it does.
Yes, so you might be right here. So section 10's prohibition of use variances unless expressly permitted by a zoning ordinance has been modified. The restriction that no variance may authorize a use or activity absent allowance by ordinance or bylaw has been amended by adding thereafter other than residential. So I guess we maybe have to rethink, Kathy.
Yeah. I don't think you can put in the no use variance there.
Yeah. But
Again,
you also don't have to ever grant them. So
This just became effective, what, July 1st, so it's fresh off the
yeah,
presses,
we had like
so-
2 days notice
Yeah.
by the state.
So what particular section are we in right now?
Look, if you look here, the,
What
under
page?
407.4, middle of
Yep.
the page.
Yep.
It says no variances shall be permitted from this requirement. I think because of the changes based on the state budget, we can't put that in there.
Got it.
Because it's for housing.
Okay,
Okay.
I think with regard to, Jay had some modifications with regard to expansions, additions, or new detached structures for an ADU must meet all the most permissive and applicable dimensional requirements for residential structures regarding allowable building coverage and setbacks per section 203.5 and building height per section 203.4. The most permissive is something that's actually in the law itself, right, Jay?
Yeah, and they've been sticklers on that. It's not in the statute, for what it's worth.
Right.
But it is in their regs, and they've been sticklers for that. So we've been using that kind of language just to get by. It usually doesn't hurt us that much because the single-family residential setbacks are often at just as large as any other residential setbacks.
My only concern was, and Mark and I had a bit of a discussion about this, what's the minimum size of a dwelling unit per the sanitary code or something, and it was like 150 square feet. And we do allow accessory structures of up to 150 square feet, single story, to be within 6 feet of the property line. But you still have to have that 120 square foot main room. I don't think they could ever make it work. So he kind of talked me off the ledge on that one. We don't have to worry about a bunch of these micro ADUs. But one of the questions that we did have later, and we can talk about, is setting a minimum. But this was just a slight variation of kind of what we had before. So I didn't have any problems with it.
Kathy, what page are you on?
I'm on page 3, if you look on the screen right here.
3 of 9.
Page 3.
Okay, I'm on there. Okay, got it.
I tried to highlight it in yellow, but it already has got a review over it, so it's really hard to see it. So I'm fine with that language. I did have a question for Jay on the next item about pre-existing non-conforming structures, but I don't think we can retain this. You never really responded to it, so I'm assuming we can't retain anything. Right, and I guess it changed again with the budget is if you have right now, if you have a non-conforming structure, you can expand that non-conformity.
Where are you? Can you just?
I'm on the one right below the expansion, addition, or new, right at the very bottom. It's shown as E, it's crossed out. Pre-existing
on what page?
Oh, on page 3? It says pre-existing non-conforming structures to be converted to an accessory apartment must receive a special permit as outlined in section 104. I don't think we can require any type of special permit.
Oh, hold on, I'm looking, so I think I might be in the wrong, no, I'm on page 4, sorry. Looking for something. So page 3,
At the very bottom there, you can see my comment there at the very bottom. I don't think we can require anything to do with special permits because of nonconformity.
well, depends. I'm still not seeing the which language, which provision?
It's number E, it's crossed out. It says pre-existing non-conforming structure to be converted to an accessory apartment must receive a special permit as outlined in section 104. I think a lot of this had to do with lots of
You can
times.
change it to a finding. You're allowed to do a finding, but you can't do a special permit. So modification, so for attached ADUs that are to be attached to a pre-existing non-conforming structure, already non-conforming,
Yep.
we can't require a special permit, but the AG says that we can do a finding per chapter 40A, section 6.
Jay, what if it's not attached?
So then
Who's doing this?
it's a little trickier because it's not an alteration or expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and we can't regulate for lot area under ADUs. So all we can do is require the setbacks and the other things. We can require findings for conversions of detached structures that are non-conforming. We can require a finding for that. And I have some good language from some bylaws that have passed in other towns for running things through the finding process.
Who's doing this finding?
Zoning.
It's the Zoning Board of Appeals under Chapter 48. If you read Chapter 48, Section 6, it says finding or special permit.
Okay.
And when we confronted the Attorney General on this, we said there's nothing in the statute here that says they're voiding the special permit. But EOHLC said, no, we're voiding the special permit. And I think the workaround that the Attorney General said is kind of a wink and a nod. Yeah, can't do a special permit, but go ahead and do a finding, which is the exact same standard, except it's not a supermajority. It's just a regular majority.
And is it appealable and everything?
It is, same 40A17, all that good stuff, yep. So we could bake that in if you want.
I think a lot of these had to do with, like, if somebody was allowed relief to build a garage within a setback, they felt fine with it because it was gonna be a garage. It wasn't gonna be a dwelling unit. So I think the idea here was like, well, now if you're gonna start switching that up, we might wanna have some findings. Pre-existing non-conforming structures. But that doesn't necessarily need to mean a garage. It could be any type of non-conforming structure.
Yeah, we've done it with conversions of barns, sheds, whatever, if you have a pre-existing non-conforming accessory structure and you want to change it to an ADU, then the AG has been okay with us requiring a finding per Chapter 48, Section 6.
So is the board interested in looking at
Yeah,
that
yeah,
language?
we should, because this is all new. This is, I haven't heard of I haven't heard of the language finding, Jay. So I think we'd like to contemplate.
I don't think the ZBA has ever done that in the town of Yarmouth.
They did
Yeah.
in the other town I worked in.
Findings?
Yeah, section 6 finding, that's how they worded it on the application.
Section 6 finding, okay.
Section 6 finding.
So it's not a special permit, it's not a variance,
Still
it's
the same
this other
process.
thing.
It's a public hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
So what can it do? You can just condition it?
It looks and quacks like a special permit.
So you could
It is,
deny it?
it is the most ridiculous thing ever, Kathy, because the Attorney General knew we were right, but they had EOHLC barking in their ear saying like, no, we can never make someone do special permit, because they forgot when they were doing the statute to bake in what they've done for other Dover Amendment uses. It says where you can never require a special permit. So the first thing they did is say, well, you can't do a special permit in this section. I go, well, it specifically says that. You don't say that. So change the statute. But then they passed the regs and they said no special permit. And I'm like, well, you can't do in a reg what's not in the statute. And the Attorney General knew that, so this was their way of placating us, I think.
Wow.
They kept trying to add more and more and more into the regulations that really wasn't justified.
Oh, yeah.
by the
Yeah,
statute.
no, a ton.
So now we have new language of Section 6 finding. Okay,
So can you deny a Section 6 finding, out of curiosity?
You can,
Okay. Okay, so everything, it can be just like a special permit?
It's just the voting that's
correct.
And just, literally,
Correct.
just the voting's different? Wow. Okay.
Yep,
All right.
And it's a simple majority, Jay, for the ZBA?
it's a simple majority, so they get, they can approve it with one less person.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Continuing, Kath.
Um,
Anything else?
wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hang on. Well, I've always got something else, Joanne.
Well, you had a question on,
Number 3,
yep.
we had, if you look at the halfway down on page 4,
Yep.
number 3, and we originally not only had different sizes, and understand that we're now set on how we have to set the size of the ADU, but we also, in the crossed out section, regardless, blah, 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 accessory apartments shall not be less than 350 square feet. Can we, if we want to, set a minimum, or do we have to rely on sanitary code and building code in order to set that?
I think you probably can. I don't think there's any prohibition on setting a minimum. So I think the way the Attorney General would look at that is that it doesn't say you can't. That's the way they've been approaching this.
So, I guess the question to the board is, do we want to see if we can't retain, it's in there now, we had talked about it, and it had been approved by the voters to have a minimum of 350 square feet.
What was the minimum, Kath, 350?
350,
I think we
yep.
should repeat it, because that's one of the things the voters did agree to. Right, Kathy?
Yes, yeah.
It's already been to town meeting once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, for me, I would think that we'd want to keep that in there.
Anything the citizens voted for, we should try to retain.
Mr. Pendleton?
I'm good.
You good?
I'm good. Yeah.
Deirdre?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Sorry, I have 5 different things I'm looking at. Next one, okay. What's that?
How many houses do you have that are under 700 square feet?
Right, I'm not saying the maximum, we're saying the minimum.
Okay.
You could do, I'm afraid there's gonna be people like, I'm just gonna squeeze in a 200 or
This was the minimum.
250,
This
because
was
it's
the
less
mi-
expensive.
This was the minimum we had in the ADU that we
Right, well, we felt
tortured
was a
ourselves
livable,
with.
habitable,
Right.
functional living unit. It was 350 square feet.
Yes, but the 760 CMR says it's 900 square feet or 50% less, 50% of the principal dwelling unit, whichever is less.
Whichever's,
Whichever is less.
right,
I see what you're saying, Mr. Yeah.
right, so if you had less than, right, but that doesn't mean you couldn't make it smaller if you wanted to.
So you had said, yeah, 700 square foot house
Right.
would be the 350.
But if they only have, my first house was 690 square feet, so if you're saying it has to be a minimum, then I couldn't build that.
Correct.
Right. No, we're saying
That's
we're
not what the law
overriding
says.
The law
regardless
says,
of
that's
these
not what the law
things.
says.
That's not what the law says. The law says they have a protected use ADU.
And it can be 50%.
Correct.
Okay,
It can be 50%.
so is this a case, ooh.
So I don't think we can set a minimum. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Good point, Mark. What do you think, Jay?
So Mark, why can't we set a minimum?
We have some smaller houses in town, and everybody has a protected use ADU. They're allowed to have a protected use ADU, and if they have a smaller house, then than 700 square feet, then and we set the minimum at 350, they wouldn't be able to build that.
But this says it shall not be larger than, it doesn't say,
Well, we could add the caveat
Yeah.
to say, have a minimum provided. Oh, someone's. We could have a caveat and then just say, minimum of 350 feet, provided that a smaller may be allowed if it's 50% of the overall house size. So we could have a carve out there. That's going to be a pretty rare example, Mark, right?
I agree.
I like the idea of putting the caveat in,
Yeah, that's a
keeping
good idea.
something.
Yeah,
'cause I
that's
think
a good
the
idea.
vast majority
Okay.
will get
yeah.
caught there. All right.
I can just see myself on freaking.
And then I guess the next big thing that I had the question about that I wanted input from Jay on was, let me go, it's on page 5, number 7. It has to do with year-round and using an ADU as a primary residence, minimum 12-month lease, no seasonal, we can say no short-term rentals, I know that, and no subletting or room rentals, and then no principal dwelling on the lot with an ADU may be operated as a short-term rental. I'm concerned about all of that being thrown out.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, because it got passed in a few Cape towns that adopted the seasonal designation, the seasonal community designation, but you haven't. So you can put it in your back pocket if, to the extent the town adopts that designation.
So you don't think we can, without that designation, you don't think that we can,
That appears to be the justification for the state.
but I guess my whole point, my whole thinking is the reason they keep doing all these housing initiatives is to create more year-round housing. So why is it wrong to say that this ADU, if you're renting it, needs to be
Year-round.
year-round housing?
Year-round.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say about that, except that,
It's the state.
yeah.
And in your comments, Jay, that we see on the side, they're related to this Seasonal Communities Act, and, Yarmouth isn't there yet, and we're not sure we're going to go there. We don't know. So if we leave this in, what's the danger of leaving this in? That the AG might,
What does it
That's the whole
violate?
thing.
They might reject it.
But they would just reject that item, that
We
line.
would hope so, yes.
But Jay, why would they reject it?
Because you can't require it. It's not the ADUs putting that kind of restriction on it is not something that we can do. They're trying to create housing. It doesn't, on the Cape, we're trying to get more full-time stuff. So if someone wanted to live in a place for 6 months,
Right.
because it was valuable housing, it kind of cuts against what they're trying to accomplish.
So the only thing we can do is prevent it from being a short-term rental. I know we can do that.
right, ADUs cannot be short-term rentals.
Says it right.
Is that, I mean, that's,
Says it right there.
that's the black and white right now on the state side, if I understand you, Kathy.
Yes, I think we can. I guess my real concern is like, okay, somebody has a house, they're living in that, they go and they build themselves an ADU that we think is gonna be another, we're doubling our density, so we think that's gonna be a year-round housing unit. They move into that and then they short-term rental their house. How has that helped us at all? I guess it gets us excise
It doesn't.
tax, but it's not the intent of doubling our density. It's to double our density with year-round housing that we,
Well, this thing is just loaded with unintended consequences, and that's one of them.
One of the challenges we have, and frustrations, I'll say, is we're trying to, as we go through this, correct all of those omissions and mistakes that are in the state law to make it seem fair and right here for Yarmouth. And maybe we can't. Maybe we just can't. But for now, I would leave it in,
Leave it in,
because
see what they
it
say.
makes a statement. I mean, I'm not sure
I
how,
would leave it in and make the state make us take it out. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes no sense
Yeah.
for us.
It
to
almost
operate.
undercuts the purpose of the whole thing.
Correct.
I guess my only point was, I think maybe I would break it out into different sections. We know we can prohibit it from being a short-term rental, so let's have that be its own separate item.
Yeah.
So that doesn't get thrown out with the bathwater. Make it.
oh, I
Make
see
it
what you're
easier
saying.
for them to just say, 7 is in violation of such and such statute or whatever.
So move some kind of tightening language from this, this article to the one we were just talking about.
Yeah, so I
ADUs.
think you'd always
On
want to
short-term
say
rentals, rather.
ADUs shall not be used as short-term rentals. Can we say no, we say no subletting or room rentals? Can you even say that, Jay? I don't even think you could say that.
Subletting, that's a whole other.
Well, they're letting us, I'm trying to think about that. They're letting us, I mean, most of them are gonna be a single bedroom anyway.
Right,
Um,
right, true, good point.
We can have it that they're just for rental. I'm not sure what they would say if we said you can't sublet a room in it. I mean, in most, I mean, we might see some 2-bedroom ones. But I'm not sure if we really have to go that deep.
Do you think there's any language with regard to promoting rental? Or even 6-month, or anything that you think would have more of a chance of passing?
Promoting
the
rental,
ages?
we're already promoting rental because we're saying you can't have separate ownership.
Well, I still think you're gonna get ADUs where people build them and their family lives there. It's still gonna have in-law apartments and no one's renting it per se. That's why I was questioning, I mean, are you required to
Yeah,
rent
I
it?
don't, I mean, I think we start pushing the bounds of what we can control under zoning.
Yeah, I don't care if it's used for family. I guess my point is, I just didn't want it to be short-term rental everywhere, because that's counterproductive to what we're trying to get done. So do you think the last line there of no principal dwelling on a lot with an ADU may be operated as a short-term rental would fly? All I'm saying is the idea was that we don't want you to be double dipping.
I don't think that they control that. They're only talking about the ADUs, so.
Oh, so maybe we
I
can,
think it does say that the owner need not occupy either,
right.
Right?
but it doesn't say that we can't prohibit STRs in the ownership, in the primary dwelling.
So if we leave this in, there's no short-term rental in the ADU, and there's no short-term rental in the principal dwelling. Right?
Just no short-term
Right.
rental on the property, period.
So maybe we
Or we
leave,
could stick that no short-term rental thing in our short-term rental bylaw.
but we're double dipping, we're sticking it everywhere. It is in the short-term rental one. So you think we can keep in the no principal dwelling on a lot with an ADU may be operated? Because you're right, they don't have any say over that. But
Leave
they
it
do
in.
allow us to say ADUs can't be used as short-term rentals, so we could keep that in there. And then we'll have a separate thing about the consecutive months. I'm worried about the 12 consecutive months, because I don't even think the seasonal communities does 12. I think Mark pointed this out, it was like 10. Yeah, so I would think at least changing it to 10 to match the seasonal communities might give it a better chance.
All lease agreement shall be for a minimum of 10 consecutive months. With no seasonal short.
Can't say no seasonal, it can say no short-term. That would be the end of it, period.
With no short-term rentals, period.
It probably, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter, the 10 or the 12.
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters. But if we're inconsistent with seasonal communities and the town goes ahead with seasonal communities, we're going to have to come back and correct this.
Does that make sense, Jay, to go to 10?
I'm sorry, does which make sense?
If we were going to leave in the lease agreements for a minimum, instead of being 12 months, changing it to 10 to be more in line with seasonal communities, should we become, as Joanne says, request become the designation?
What if we decide not to go with seasonal?
Then
Could we
the
still do
AG
12?
knows that we're not a seasonal community at the time, and they will decide whether they'll keep it in or not.
I mean, you can include it. They may miss it. I doubt it. But because, I mean, again, the worst case scenario is that they excise that language.
Right. And if we have it in its own separate one line, I think it's easier for them to excise it.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I don't want to signal any, I don't want to give them any indication that we think seasonal communities is a good idea, and that we're already conforming some
I
of
don't
our.
think anyone can hear you, Susan.
Oh, okay. No, I just don't want to give, by changing it to 10, I agree, I don't think it matters. But however, if we were to make it 10, would that be signaling that we are seriously considering seasonal communities?
I don't
That's
think.
what I don't want.
I don't think so.
Okay, all right.
I don't think anybody's,
Eagle eyes will be watching this, I just don't want to be accused of salting the waters before we, okay,
no,
Okay.
I personally don't think so. I think
okay.
it just protects us from having to come back and change it.
And then I guess the only other thing, I think Jay had a comment about when we're getting into the last page, on page 6 there.
Where are you, Kathy, what
Page
page?
6 at the top, registrations, but he's just referencing the Board of Health regulation, not in the zoning bylaw regulation. And that's where I referenced it is a general bylaw, chapter 108, occupancy of buildings with regard to the registration. I just want to emphasize that you have to register you have to get a rental certificate for your ADU as well.
Which is fine.
So I think we're okay. I think we made it through that one pretty unscathed.
Okay. And the rest we're just eliminating,
Yes.
which we've been through
Yep.
before.
Yep, except for the one middle, and we
Any-
have the one section that, enforceability of restriction, then after that, yes, you're right, it's all gone.
Any other questions for Kathy or Mr. Tallerman on these? Okay, so next up, Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A. Mr. Tallerman, we have a memo that you sent to us. I think you sent it to all of your clients about Chapter 40A. If you could give us the Reader's Digest version of this, that would be great.
I
What
wish-
what
I
should
wish
we
I could
be
do it
most
in a
worried
Reader's
about?
Digest. Yeah.
Somebody
Hold on.
somebody did a cute little summary, one of the planners on the planner server did a little summary, and I thought it was kind of cute. And they gave examples and everything, it was in the packet.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Oh, the
I like
matrix,
that,
yeah.
Yeah, they just talked about what was in the old and then kind of what was in the new, in a very,
And I think I saw one of those and I was like, I think they kind of missed some things. 'cause
simple?
some of it,
Yeah.
you know, so I think there's a number of changes here, and I think in our memo, and we tried to make it as plain English as possible, but we couldn't really. So the vested rights stuff, pre-existing non-conformings, there's a bunch of new things here that are going to be by right, but it's actually a little narrower than we originally thought. There are some mild changes in terms of what you can do to kind of freeze your vested rights. And then there's the changes where I think a big one is where it says pre-existing non-conforming structures or residential uses that do not conform to zoning because of lot size, shape, frontage, lot coverage, or floor area ratio may be extended or altered as of right if such extension or alteration complies with the current dimensional regulations regarding height, stories, and setback. What I think
Jay,
that's...
Jay, if I could interrupt you for a second, what page are you on in your memo? Is that page 3?
I'm at the top of page 3.
Yep, thank you.
So, And by the way, can you just bear with me for a second? I just have to get a plug to plug in my computer because I think I'm about to lose some power here for you. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Kath, the KP Law one doesn't say what he just said. I'll get ironed out as we go.
Yeah, I think we already allow that. The only thing is that it is the current dimensional regulations regarding height, stories, and setback. So things like building coverage would no longer be something. So you could, right now, if you're going to be exceeding the building coverage, it would matter, but under this, it wouldn't matter anymore because you're only looking at height, stories, and setback. So they're restricting the things that you can be worried about, so to speak.
Right. I think what they were trying to do is there was a line of cases that came up in the early aughts into the early 2000 teens that really solidified the notion that if you had a house that conformed with all your setbacks, but you were just on a small lot, then you would need to go and get a special permit if you wanted to do an addition, even though you were complying with the setbacks and everything else with the addition. So what I think they've done is taken that away. Now, if you have a house that is on too small of a lot, but you still violate a side setback and you want to make some changes, then you still have to go through a special permit process or a finding process. But so what they're trying to capture is that small circumstance. I mean, they use lot coverage and frontage as well, but really what they're trying to do is like, if you have a house and it's fine, it's a small house, and you're right in the middle of a lot, you don't violate any of the setbacks, then have at it as long as you don't violate any new setbacks. So I think that's kind of where they're going with that. It expands some rights.
I think
With
Mark was
respect to
saying that
that?
we kind of do that in our bylaw already.
We already do that.
Yeah, and towns do it in various degrees, and so they give some additional rights, but now, some towns we're gonna have to amend bylaws pretty specifically on these things.
That's something we wouldn't mind knowing what we need to change in our bylaw and what we don't need to change. Some of this is admin-y type stuff, just the things that poor Mark's gonna have to remember with regard to freezing of zoning and the last permit issued and all those bizarre things.
Yeah, I mean, and I have a talk with Mark's
Oh, yeah, next week.
chapter or association, Building Commissioners Association next week. I'm attending a seminar. And there's a lot of stuff for building commissioners because they're the gatekeepers for the by right stuff, certainly. So we're going to be picking up a bunch of those things next week on that. There's probably not if you have kind of already a more generous bylaw, it isn't going to change a lot. So it is true, and we go with this. I think it's on page 2 of my of our memo. It's no longer a building or a special permit that gives you vested rights when new zoning is coming out. You could have any kind of other approval. They don't say what that is, but maybe site plan approval or something else. So that is a bit of a change. I doubt you picked that up in your bylaw, but if you do, then we're going to have to look at it. There are some issues regarding starting. You get to increase the period within which work must commence under a building permit now to 24 months. So because they want to give people a little more time, and calculates the deadline from the date of issuance of the last permit necessary for construction. Again, they don't really say too much about it. That could be a wetlands permit. So that's it's a little bit more generous as well. There's a change to the separate lot exemption, which is paragraph 4 of chapter 48, section 6, which applies to vacant lots. were essentially grandfathered, which were created at the time that zoning changed. And that was for residential properties only. And now it's for all uses, not just single and two-family uses. So we're gonna have to be looking at bylaws that may mimic the existing language a little bit.
Ours definitely does.
And then obviously huge changes for variances. And no, I mean, variances, I think while they are making it easier to get variances, I think many would say that this change is long overdue because it's almost impossible to get a variance. What I think they're doing is not necessarily making it easier to get a variance, because under the new provisions, you could still deny a variance. It's kind of quirky version of a special permit under the new language, and there's still plenty of room to deny a variance. What they're preventing, however, by this new language is a situation where you grant a variance, because zoning boards do grant variances pretty routinely, some more than others. But if a neighbor appeals, they're almost always going to win. Now, if a zoning board grants a variance, it's going to be within their general discretion, and a neighbor is unlikely to be able to challenge it, particularly. So I don't know what kind of language you have on variances, or if you just kind of reference the statute now, but it's a big change for the way zoning boards are going to have to process it. We've heard quite a bit that, oh my gosh, variances are going to proliferate out there, and they're going to be stacking them up. I don't really see it that way, because the language gives a zoning board plenty of room, plenty of reasons to deny a variance, and in fact, the new version codifies something that only existed previously in case law, which is that a zoning board may consider a variance, the need for a variance, to be self-created, meaning you created your own problems here, so we're not going to give you a variance. That didn't exist in the prior language. So the zoning board still have a lot of tools to deny. One thing that they removed was language relating to the zoning board to issue conditions on a variance. Now, there's been a lot of debate amongst municipal attorneys as to whether or not conditions are prohibited. Generally, under statutory construction, when the legislature removes part of a statute, it's intended to be purposeful. But there's a whole line of case law out there that says the power to grant something means the power to condition that. So we don't know yet what the courts are going to do with this new variance language. I think they rushed it. I think it's going to be difficult. They don't define what practical difficulty is. It's going to be kind of a whole new body of case law. It's going to be good for attorneys, but I'm not sure it's going to be that great for zoning boards for a while, until the court cases settle out a little.
Fair enough.
So if I may, Jay, so would a zoning board of appeals be one of the participants in a court case? Or would the town of Yarmouth be someone who would challenge the inability for our zoning board of appeals to apply conditions to a particular variance?
It would be the zoning board. I mean, the zoning board denies or grants a variance, and they would be a party to anyone who challenged their decision. It's all the zoning board. It's not going to be the planning board.
No, but I'm saying, would the challenge be if the zoning board applied conditions to it?
Oh, then yes, if the grantee of that variance didn't like the conditions, I suppose they may say, you don't have the right to grant conditions, or that your conditions were arbitrary and capricious. And we don't know what the courts are going to say as to whether or not the legislature purposely eliminated that ability to impose conditions. because there's, again, a contrary line of cases that say a statute doesn't have to say that you can impose conditions because the power to grant a permit includes the power to grant conditions. So we just don't know what's going to happen out there with it, and there's nothing to indicate why they removed that particular language.
Thank you. Anything else you want to bring us up to date with on your memo to us, Jay?
Yeah, no, we're just feeling our way through it. There's
Yep.
still a lot of dialogue happening. I'm looking forward to talking to the building commissioners. We're starting to look at, maybe not so much for the fall, but for next spring, working on some bylaws to fix some things in some towns. We'll have to go through that process with Kathy and you all to see if we have to change anything in Yarmouth. We may not have to, but we have to keep an eye on it for sure.
Okay.
So we learned about it. We had literally 3 days notice, and now we have another statute, as Kathy referenced previously, that is coming up right behind it that is going to have additional changes to the zoning act. And it's in conference committee now, so we don't know what's going to come out. So I don't think the governor is done in terms of pushing through changes to the zoning act, which a fan of, in some part for good reason, in some part because the governor is not, and I like the governor, but she's not a fan of home rule at all when it comes to housing, not at all.
Yeah,
That's
very
pretty
very
pretty
obvious.
obvious.
Thank you, Jay. What else did we want to cover with Jay, Kathy? Anything else?
No, I think we are gonna talk about, I don't know if you could stay on, if you want to talk about the seasonal communities designation.
Right.
We had looked at
We have a draft.
the two zoning bylaws in the town of, and this might be interesting to get Jay's opinion on.
So we have this draft memo, Kathy, you put together from us to the planning board with regard to zoning requirements,
July 31st one.
the seasonal communities designation.
Oh, that's complete streets. Sorry.
That's,
Yeah, we gotta
Liam,
look
if
at
you,
Streets
if
is
you could
next.
show the screen so that Jay can see it. Yeah, we had spent some time looking at seasonal communities designation when we first were offered the designation, and we had some concerns with regard to movable tiny houses. But we've been given some input from Housing and Livable Communities that they feel like to further regulate movable tiny homes would allow us to outright prohibit them. This board, being somewhat skeptics, and justifiably so, are interested in asking that this was not a definitive answer. It was like, it's my understanding from a policy person, senior policy person from Housing and Livable Communities, but the planning board is going to recommend that our town council ask for a legal opinion from HLC confirming our ability to prohibit movable tiny houses. We're not interested in having RVs or camper trailers being used as dwelling units in the town of Yarmouth. I don't know if you have any other communities who have seasonal designation who've run into this or had any further discussions with Housing and Livable Communities on this?
Yeah, so Chatham, we're council in Chatham, and they've done it. They haven't really done anything other than accept the designation. They are doing a bit of work around attainable housing, which is kind of a component of it. The state really hasn't really caught up that yet with the statute, which makes me wonder why they adopted a statute without having an idea as to how they were going to do it, implement it. I think there's a lot of maze and there's not a lot of mandatory stuff in there. I think, and I wasn't involved in the decision to accept it, the designation in Chatham, but I also didn't see a ton of downside for them doing it.
I think the only thing that we looked at as the planning board was the two required zoning amendments that had to be adopted within 24 months of accepting the designation. We were fine with regular tiny houses, they're just tiny homes and have at it. But it was the movable ones that we were concerned about. And again, they do a lot with undersized lots as well. But we also, in our zoning bylaw, already have a lot of by right grandfathering, a little bit more than even 40A on undersized lots in our community. So we really didn't think that there was going to be that many people who would be using the undersized lots portion of the seasonal communities. Really, the only thing might be, there might be a couple, and I can't even imagine, I can't even think of one, where they have less than the 50 feet of frontage that's required by our current zoning bylaw, and this allows you to go down to 20. So maybe you had a couple unbuildable lots out there because they didn't have the frontage, and now all of a sudden they might be able to be buildable. But most people, I think, would go under our current zoning, which doesn't require the year-round or the attainable housing restriction that the undersized lots. So we didn't have a lot of concerns with regard to that. I just didn't know if you had heard anything about movable tiny houses, because that was where our main concern was. And it sounds like you really haven't yet.
I really haven't yet. I wasn't aware. I mean, I'm happy to look into it. I wasn't aware that we were going to cover this ground tonight.
Oh,
We
yeah,
could
no worries.
give you an update of what we're seeing out there. The town that we're working with or have worked with on affordable housing on the Cape that we represent is Chatham. And they haven't involved us that much in this component of it. I don't know what they're proposing for any bylaws coming up, because I haven't seen them. They haven't sent them to us, and they might not be ready yet to do it.
Yeah.
So,
I think, they're just kind of, the select board's kind of trying to garner some input from various boards and committees. Last March, we had kind of set up a little bit of an alarm saying we're very concerned and please don't put it on the annual town meeting because we didn't know anything about the movable tiny homes. We did get this additional information saying to regulate, they feel could prohibit. To me, allowing someone to regulate something doesn't normally include prohibit. But that's why we wanted to add in, we're looking for you to provide some type of request a legal opinion confirming that from Housing and Livable Communities. So just so you know, you're being listed.
We're happy to do whatever opinion you want. I just, need a little bit of, we'll get some context around it, and let's just make sure that Bob knows that that's what you're asking. I'll be happy to do an opinion.
This is a memo to the select board. I think we're trying to get some definitive answer from the states, from legal person to legal person versus a lot of this wishy-washy. It's my understanding, we believe. We certainly don't want to go ahead and do a bylaw and say we're prohibiting movable tiny homes, and then the AG strikes it. And then we're like, what? The only reason we were allowing this is because we thought we could prohibit them. So and I think we might be taking a step back a little bit and letting some other communities move forward first with the designation and the zoning amendments too, to kind of get a better understanding of that. We have our Community Housing Committee and our Affordable Housing Committee. They're all very, very busy right now with a lot of other initiatives, even though they might be interested in some of the attainable things. I think they want to get a few more things off their plate before they have the time to even consider diving into that a little bit more depth. And I think if you're really looking at an attainable housing trust, that's probably a whole separate person. Personnel board, appropriations, and all of that in order to get another person to take a look at that. So,
And I think, Kathy, what you would like from us tonight is, again, some consensus. We'd like to get this in front of the select board. So if anyone has any adjustments, changes, recommendations on language, please get them to Kathy as soon as you can.
Okay.
there's a super rush on it now. It sounds as though Community Housing Committee wasn't, you're busy with that. Affordable Housing Trust did meet, and again, they're concentrating, I think I put this in the email to you when I transmitted, that they're really concentrating on the mixed use RFP that they had out. Unfortunately, they did not receive any responses to that, so they're going to check and see what kind of the reasons why, maybe do some tweaking, and then resubmit that and go out. So they're also very busy with doing some great work and initiatives that they want to see to fruition. So I don't think anyone's willing to say, oh, we want to champion this right away. So there's a little bit of time if there's people who want to look at this, and we can talk about it again.
Okay, so we'll take some time to look at this. There's nothing urgent about it.
I don't think
But
so.
at some point, we do need to communicate with the select board.
Yes, just a bookend, because we said we set the alarm before, now we have to say we're less concerned about it, but we still want that legal opinion.
I'd like to make a note that Ms. Britta has left.
Glasses.
Glasses?
Your glasses, Susan?
Glasses.
Oh. I'd be stuck in the parking lot.
Thank you.
Joanne.
Appreciate it. So we're good on seasonal communities, Kath?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Complete streets.
I think we're good, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank
So
you so
Kathy,
much.
we've got some work to do primarily on STRs, right?
Correct.
I think maybe what we should do, Kathy, over the next few days is kind of agree on what our to-do list, and then maybe work from a clean version, accept some changes, and then red line from there, so the document isn't so filled with red lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all right, awesome. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Yep, take care. Bye.
Complete streets. I did, back in June, Amanda Lima, town engineer,
Yeah,
came and
yep,
gave a nice little presentation. They did do a lot of the public outreach, and they got a lot of great comments. The only change that they did get, and it came after you, I had submitted it to you guys, was just the definition, or the name of the program that came from Mass DOT. It's Complete Streets Funding Program is a program, and that was the only change. So, I've prepared a draft memo. Obviously, this is something that is in support of our local comprehensive plan transportation goal. It also supports Action 8 of the transportation to increase connections throughout the town and between existing bike trails and destination locations. It supports the development of that prioritization plan to help fill in those gaps, which is kind of what we need in our transportation network for all the different modes and for all people of all different ages and abilities. I did appreciate that they actually provided very clear and best practices and prioritizations of project types while offering a balanced and flexible approach on a case-by-case basis. So they're like, we're going to try and put all of these in, but we also have these criteria where we may not be able to include it, and these are the things that we're going to be looking at when we make that determination. And then they did do a lot of public outreach, and I like to always emphasize that to the select board, done by the engineering department, meeting with us, the Recreation Commission, the Disability Commission. They also set up multiple tables at the libraries. I think they've set up one on the Cape Cod Rail Trail, and they also had a 30-day public comment period. And then, of course, having this in place increases our grant opportunities to actually implement some of these infrastructure improvements. And then just thanking the engineering department for taking this on and that you support the policy. This is something that does need to be looked at, although we technically don't have quorum anymore. I just realized that.
Yeah.
Any comments on the draft?
Not at the moment.
No,
No, okay.
no.
I'm just looking at the second to the, not the bottom bullet, but the second to the bottom bullet, Kath. Is that really important to be in there?
The public engagement?
Yeah.
Is that the one? The select board always asks, well, what public engagement happened? They always ask it.
They do, okay,
do.
that-
So I
that's
just-
my question.
Yeah, I just wanted to give them kudos for all of the work that they did do.
Okay, that's fine. Otherwise, I don't have any comments on it, looks fine.
I agree.
I don't think we can do anything else. We don't have quorum.
anymore.
I have to send this out, and I'm going to send it out.
Yeah.
But we don't have quorum anymore, so we should just
So what do we do now?
adjourn.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?